Today is July 4th. Happy Independence Day. And I just wanted to come on and talk to you a little bit about the fragility of Independence Day, and I think we're seeing it now. Usually I approach Independence Day with a lot of enthusiasm and excitement because I love our country so much. And right now I feel like we are in a really, really dangerous place in our country. We've got so many people who don't understand the intention of the Founding Fathers. They don't understand the Constitution. They don't understand the powers of the federal government versus the states. And they are not interested in researching and finding out that information on their own. They're just taking sound bites and memes and running with it. And man, they'll fight you to the death over things they know nothing about. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about the fragility of independence and of our nation and the warnings of the Founding Fathers that we're starting to see today. So back in 1830, we had a young judge from France that arrived in America. His name was Alexis de Tocqueville, and if I mispronounce it, I hope that my French friends will forgive me. He came to study the American system, and he and his friends soaked up more information about the Great American Experiment in 10 months than most scholars absorbed in a lifetime. And so I wanted to just read some of a little bit from his 2-volume work entitled Democracy in America. And in it he wrote, he saw the strength of character and moral integrity that would make the United States prosperous. But as they became self-sufficient, he saw that they would be less concerned about each other and much less concerned about the principles that made them a great people. He says this would leave them vulnerable to the manipulation of clever politicians who would begin to compromise them perpetual security if they accepted certain schemes contrived by some of their leaders. He then described what modern students have led to identify as democratic socialism. You hear that a lot, right? From the Democrats and the young people that they're talking to, the democratic socialism. And that power is absolute, minute, regular, provident, and mild. It would be like the authority of a parent if, I'm quoting him, if, like that authority, its object was to prepare men for manhood, but it seeks, on the contrary, to keep them in perpetual childhood. It is well content that the people should rejoice, provided they think of nothing but rejoicing. For their happiness, such a government willingly labors, but it chooses to be the sole agent and only arbiter of that happiness. It provides for their security, foresees and supplies their necessities, facilitates their pleasures, manages their principal concerns, directs their industry, regulates the descent of property, and subdivides their inheritances. What remains to spare them all the care of thinking of the trouble of living? After having thus successively taken each member of the community in its powerful grasp and fashioned them at will, the supreme power then extends its arm over the whole community. It covers the surface of society with a network of small, complicated rules, minute and uniform, through which the most original minds and the most energetic characters cannot penetrate to rise above the crowd. The will of man is not shattered, but softened, bent, and guided. These men are seldom forced by it to act, but they are constantly restrained from acting. Such power does not destroy, but it prevents existence. It does not tyrannize, but it compresses, enervates, extinguishes, and stupefies a people, till the nation is reduced to be nothing better than a flock of timid and industrious animals, of which the government is the shepherd. So this is what he prophesied, sort of by watching what was happening in our country. And, I think that history is powerful, and there are a lot of people that don't want to talk about history. There are a lot of people that want to erase history. And the people that were watching our country be founded and be formed, their warnings, their concerns should be revisited and discussed, and to see if we're actually acting those out. And I think in a lot of ways we currently are. So, and it talks about, the security, handing all your, the government will take care of you. Isn't the government wonderful? They're going to take care of you. And in that, it takes away your willingness and your desire and your individualism and your desire to be who God intended you to be, and to achieve your greatness, because now you're part of a system that you rely on for your comforts, but you'll never get to where you're supposed to be as a human being. And I think that's it's a fair warning. So then we know that Benjamin Franklin, when they signed the Declaration of Independence, and Mrs. Powell of Philadelphia asked him, "Well, doctor, what have we got, a republic or a monarchy?" With no hesitation whatsoever, Franklin responded, "A republic, if you can keep it." Now, we know repeatedly, we hear it all the time, especially the last few weeks, where the Democrats cry from the rooftops, "Our democracy is in danger. They're destroying our democracy." Well, the Founding Fathers made it very clear that they did not want a democracy. They did not want mob rule. They wanted the minority to be able to have a say too, which is the entire way that our country's been set up. But they want to keep reiterating it's a democracy, to change the language, to confuse people that don't know any better. We are a constitutional republic. And every time someone throws "we're a democracy" out there, people should be pushing back, saying we are a constitutional republic, because our young people are picking up this language, and this is what they believe. It's everywhere. You can see it everywhere. You can see it in the demonstrations in the streets. You can see it. They don't understand because they're being misled, right? John Adams gave a warning. Among the warning, he was one of the strongest warning voices when it came to the foundation of this country. And he says, "Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other." Now, we see, religious freedom is very important. Our First Amendment guarantees religious freedom, freedom of religion, and freedom not to worship too, if that's your choice. However, we can see an attack on religion in this country. Almost, I can't even tell you the conversations I've had over the last 2 weeks where Christianity was just trash. These people that don't understand Christianity, these people that are on the outside, just they just want to trash your religion, your belief system, because they disagree with it. And when it came to Roe v. Wade, that wasn't a Christian-led reversal of Roe v. Wade. That was the Supreme Court doing its job. That never should have been decided at the Supreme Court level. It never should have been decided there. And the fact that people don't understand that, or they do, but they want to stamp their feet because they didn't get their own way, is equally as dangerous. Because you need to understand and respect the way that the system has been set up, the checks and balances of the government. And Thomas Jefferson talks about that. He said, "The engine of consolidation of the federal judiciary, the two other branches, the corrupting and corrupted instruments." So the judicial branches. He sees the legislative branches as the corrupt and corrupting instruments. In other words, the Supreme Court uses its judicial mandates to draw more and more power to Washington. Then the Congress and the executive use this power to shatter the Constitution and corrupt the dual federalism, which was designed to balance the political powers between the government and the states, right? So he's saying the Supreme Court has the ability, could, if it was corrupt, could use the legislative branch and the executive branch to corrupt the nation. So once Thomas Jefferson's distant cousin, John Marshall, became Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Marshall set himself and his associates up as the final arbiter on all constitutional issues. Nowhere in the Constitution was the federal judiciary given the power to enforce its will on the states or other two federal departments. Jefferson had the Supreme Court in his sights when he wrote, "The great object of my fear is the federal judiciary. That body, like gravity, ever acting with noiseless foot and alarming advance, gaining ground to step by step and holding what it gains, is engulfing insidiously the state governments into the jaws of that federal government which feeds them." Now, Thomas Jefferson was very wary of a strong federal government, and he wanted to make sure that things were set up in a way that was kept in check. So, Roe v. Wade, the decision that came out against New York for the Second Amendment, these are decisions that our current Supreme Court is saying, whoa, wait a minute. The Supreme Court isn't supposed to legislate to the states. The Supreme Court isn't supposed to have the power to legislate. It's supposed to just determine what is constitutional and what is allowed through the Constitution, and to secure the natural laws, right? So anything that is not in the Constitution that says it is the right of the federal government to decide or to control is left to the states. So when they turned over Roe v. Wade and they said, this shouldn't have been decided here, we are returning the power of these decisions to the states to legislate, where their constituents are closer to them and their constituents can tell them what they want, because the judiciary isn't supposed to do that. That's not their job to legislate, make laws, or enforce laws. Their job is strictly at the Supreme Court level to make sure that they're adhering to the Constitution. And so when people lost their minds because it was wrongly decided at the Supreme Court level when Roe v. Wade was first heard, and it was returned. They undid an injustice because this should have been done at the state level. So, and I know I'm talking a little slowly today because I've had people tell me I speak too quickly or I speak too softly when I do these. So I just want to make sure that I'm being clear and heard and I'm being respectful to people that are listening. So James Madison warned, if Congress can employ money indefinitely for general welfare and are the sole supreme judges of the general welfare, they may take the care of religion into their own hands. They may appoint teachers in every state, county, and parish, and pay them out of the public treasury. They may take into their own hands the education of children, the establishing in like manor schools throughout the Union. They may assume the provision of the poor. Were the power of Congress to be established in the latitude contended for, it would subvert the very foundations and transmute the very nature of the limited government established by the people of America. Okay, so just take that in for a second. If Congress can give money indefinitely for the general contemporaries to fund education and appoint teachers in every state, county, and parish, paid out of public funds, they may take into their own hands the education of children, establishing in like manner schools throughout the Union, and they may assume the provision of the poor. Right? So we hear this all the time with school choice, where, those of us that advocate for school choice, we're saying all families deserve a choice in education. Those tax dollars, those public dollars, they belong to the taxpayers. They belong to the people. They don't belong to the government. They don't belong to the school district. They don't belong to the Department of Education. They belong to the people. And if the intent of that money is to educate children, then families deserve to have the control over those dollars and decide how their children are going to be educated. Right here is a warning from James Madison that having one centralized federally funded school system will control the thought process of all of the children and put the government in control of them. And parents are starting to see that, and parents are starting to fight back. And then the unionized teachers that are they've got so much to lose in the way of power over your children, in the way of power of the union, in the way of the money that these unions make. I mean, the people that run these unions make a lot of money, right? And then you've got these teachers that really love working with children and want to do the right things by them and want to teach and want to be there for them and want to give back to their community through their job, through what they love to do. And the two aren't reconciling anymore. And we're seeing it. And parents are seeing it. And parents are like, hey, listen to me. This is what I want for the education for my children. And the school boards are saying, no, we're not going to listen. So the parents are saying, all right, I'm going to vote with my feet. And they're taking them elsewhere. And thank God we live in a state that has allowed parents to have more control over their federal dollars, over their state dollars, and allowed for the Children's Scholarship Fund. And we've got generous people that donate to private schools, and those private schools can give out scholarships to children too. Thank God we live in a state where we do have school choice for many, many children. Not all. We're not there yet. If you're high middle class, but you still can't afford private school, you're still not qualifying for those financial. You're at that financial cap where you're not actually able to receive those funds back. And I hope that it happens for every parent, every family in the state soon. And then we've got Abraham Lincoln, who said, "At what point then is the approach of danger to be expected? I answer, if it ever reaches us, it must spring from among us. It cannot come from abroad. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. As a nation of free men, we must live through all time or die by suicide." And this was his warning that we would be such a strong nation. He didn't see something from the outside coming in to take us down. But he did see people from within, that we would destroy our own nation. And that's what we're seeing right now. People that don't understand the country, that have been taught to hate our nation. And it's for us, we the people that believe in this nation, that love this nation, that honor the people that fought for this nation. It's for us to fight back and push back and make sure that we secure the independence and the liberty that this nation provides, and make sure we secure it for the generations to come. Because if we do not start pushing back and fighting back, these warnings are very clear right now. Some of these are coming to fruition, and most are on the horizon. So we really need to stop fighting with each other on Facebook, and we need to stop living in social media and get out and start taking back our nation. Help candidates. It's 2022. We've got elections coming up. And you need to help candidates that will help you preserve this nation. They're putting their name on a ballot. You have no idea the sacrifice that it is to run for office. The time from your family, the commitment, the hits that you take from people that just hate you for loving the nation and for, defending the things that you believe in. You have no idea what candidates go through. And for those of you that did put your name on a ballot at some point or will, thank you. Thank you for stepping up. And those that don't, because you can't, or it's just not you, or you have talents and abilities that lie somewhere else, use those talents and abilities to help people, because we need to be in this together. We need to be securing the freedoms and liberties of our nation, because we are definitely not in a strong place right now, or a good place. And I feel for our children and our youth who are being brought up to hate our nation because they just are being lied to and manipulated, and we're not being a strong enough voice for them. And we need to be stronger and louder and come to them, with love and compassion, and help them to understand what the truth is. because it's a scary place for them right now watching all this happen. And we need to give them some security, and we need to talk to them about what these founding documents mean, what the Declaration of Independence means, what the Bill of Rights means, how these things came to be, and why they're important. So, I know I've talked your ear off. So I'm going to leave you with something more positive. Because this is my favorite quote on the 4th of July. And it's from John Adams again. And he says, Independence Day will be the most memorable epoch in the history of America. I am apt to believe that it will be celebrated by succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival. It ought to be commemorated as the day of deliverance by solemn acts of devotion to God Almighty. It ought to be solemnized with pomp and parade and shoes and games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, illuminations from one end of this continent to the other, from this time forward evermore. You will think me transported with enthusiasm, but I am not. I am well aware of the toil and the blood and treasure that it will cost us to maintain this declaration and support and defend these states. Yet, through all the gloom, I can see the rays of ravishing light and glory. I can see the end is more than worth all the means, and that prosperity will triumph in the day's transaction. Even although we should rue it, which I trust in God, we shall not. Happy Independence Day. I hope that you all have some time with your family to celebrate this great nation.